Hi, and welcome to Walleye Chronicles, where we pick you guys up, bring you out of the street, get you on Skype, do whatever we can do to get you in front of the camera, and talk to you about how walleye fishing, or any fish in general, has gotten the hooks in you, and you want to make sure you're out as much as possible every single day. So today with me, I have a great guest from over Minnesota. Andy Bartusek is with me today. If you Google his name, you will come across just smorgasbord of stuff that he's been into, from tournament fishing to a very successful YouTube channel, the Crappie Chronicles. So without further ado, Adam, how you doing today?
Good, man. Good. How are you?
Not too bad. So I did a quick Google of you, and I found that you are involved in a lot of things. From content making, I see you do some tournament angling, and everything you do seems to turn to gold.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but yeah, I mean that's cool. Yeah, I'm glad have a long bread trail, I guess, where people are like, can find stuff for a while. But yeah, I like doing a lot of different things in the industry.
So tell me do you remember your first time fishing? I know you talk about all the time that you're not, let's say, a top angler. You're more average, although your videos kind of seem to say otherwise. But how did you first get into fishing? What was your first fishing trips like? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I first got into it. My uncle had a cabin up in Park Rapids, Minnesota, and none of my immediate family really fishes that much. Like my uncle does. They do a lot more now, actually, than when I was young. I grew up on a pig farm, but when I was young, they would go up to the cabin for like 1 or 2 weeks, and whenever I was up there, basically, my parents said the only way they could ever get me to shut up was if they would put me on a paddle boat and let me go fish. So they would just send me out like all day, and I just remember loving it. Like I'd get out, paddle around, go do my thing. I'd be gone all day. And yeah, like those are my first fishing memories really are up there. I remember catching my first largemouth and smallmouth and big bluegills. And that's kind of what started it for me. And then I played a lot of sports for a really long time. And once I realized there was a tournament aspect to bass fishing, that's kind of what kicked it up a gear. And then, over time, made friends in the industry and had guys kind of come up and be like, hey, we should, before like really groups or anything really became a thing, I would say in the ice fishing industry or just in the fishing industry in general, or like young teams or whatever you want to call them.
Mhm.
We had friends who were like, hey, we should group up and like work together and make like our own outdoor TV or YouTube show back before anybody was really putting anything on YouTube. And that's how I got into the filming stuff, was just starting to mess around with friends. And man, now it's like 7, 8 years later and it's a full-time job. And I don't really know how I quite stumbled into it, but here we are.
Right. So those first times fishing, what was it about fishing that kind of really drove the hooks in you? Was it the catch? It was the pursuits, or what was that like?
I think for me, it's the puzzle. And I think that's Baxter, why are you yelling? Sorry, that's my dog. Um, I think for me, it's the puzzle and just I'm a storyteller in general. You're gonna have to let me go deal with him real quick.
No,
Someone's at the
that's a
door.
problem.
Okay, sorry about that. I got that dealt with.
No problem. Got the Amazon shipment
uh,
coming in, or what?
yeah, I think it was Amazon, and yeah, he wasn't too pumped about it. So, yeah. Anyways, what was the question, and we can pick right back up.
So, what was it about the fishing that kind of give you? You talking about? Was it the puzzle to put it together? Was it the hook? Was it just being on your own? What was that about that really gave you the hook at the hooks into you with fishing?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely the puzzle. Being a storyteller, for me, I think that was always the coolest thing about it. Like, I like going out and catching fish, but for me, I like doing stuff that are like above and beyond, I guess I would say. So, like, not only trying to go out and catch crappies, catch really big ones, not only trying to go out and catch bass, but beat other people at doing it. Um, Not only going and trying to catch like 5 pound smallmouth, but like, let's go get a 7 pounder in November when nobody else is on the water. Like, I love the adventure and just like, I don't know, I've always had great memories of that sort of travel and just really pushing the limits. That's what I like. I like pushing the limits.
So, when you were a kid, was there other kids around you that you had a chance to fish with where you grew up, or was it pretty much just up at the cabin? That was it.
No, it was just me, like 100% by myself for the most part till I was, I mean, once I got to junior, senior year of high school, me and Sobe started doing tournaments. We went to the same high school and everything
Okay.
together. So we played baseball when we were in like third and fourth grade, grew up and eventually we're like, hey, this fishing thing's kind of cool. And we were kind of the only ones around here that
Yep.
really liked it enough to go chase that. So he's about the only one, but when we got up to, you know, see, when we were in high school, basically at that point.
I gotcha. So you win it alone.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
for the
crazy.
most part, yeah. I just really liked it, yeah.
So fast forward, you get into doing the film work and all that kind of stuff. What makes you your B roll is spectacular. What the process goes through? You kind of find stuff like that and be like, hey, this is I want to get this on film somewhere or another and work into a program.
Yeah, I think just watching guys like Jay Siemens or, especially guys not even and Kyle Van Devers, another one. Kyle's insane. His filming eye is incredible. But him and then who really got me into that way of filming was watching John B back in the day, before, like, the Guggen Squad and everything was a
Oh,
thing. Like John, people think of the Guggen Squad one way or another now, but back in the day, he was the first guy doing like full length films, Casey Neistat type YouTube stuff where you're getting really cool B-roll and all that. So I think for me, it was just learning like you can tell a story in so many different ways and just with setting scenes and there's small little details, but to me, I think I like getting a good B-roll shot more than like a good fish catch. Because in a fishing show, like everybody catches fish. Like I don't think it's
yep.
really that hard to get a good fish catch. Like everybody's
Hmm.
seen it. So it's figuring out how to tell a story or do it in a new way that people haven't seen. So I think it's just being creative. Plus, I mean, the other guys I do it with now, like Waldo and Griff and Pink, like they don't necessarily hold the camera, but we've done this long enough that like if they see something good, they bring it up. Like they're all
Bring it
kind
up.
of creative in their own minds, and now they see what I see. So I think it just comes down to kind of having an eye for it.
Do you ever take it from like outside the fishing world? Like you ever watching a movie and you're like, oh man, and he's like scribble it down or whatever. Like I gotta try that.
Yeah, no, the so the intro for season two, the like when we went up to Otter Tail County, that intro of that film's inspired by Yellowstone.
Yep.
That whole intro is very Yellowstone-esque. And then last year's intro and like the teaser announcement that was all completely in reverse, that was Ozark.
Ah.
Ozark's done that before. So I take a lot of that stuff from stuff that's outside of the world. Like I'll just go down YouTube rabbit holes of doing that. Or like when I did Chasing Ghosts, like that intro scene that's inspired by Marvel. Just Marvel in general, the Marvel comic book flip through. So
I
yeah,
gotcha.
it's just taking stuff like that and wanting to know like, can I do that? And then you start messing with it and you're like, okay, yeah, I can, but how do I do it? How do I make it, cool?
Do you how many cameras have you lost doing that, or have you ever come close to losing cameras doing B-roll?
Not yet. Not knocking on wood, but it's bound to happen. Like it'll
Is there
happen
ever
eventually.
is there ever a
I've
shot that
crashed
you
plenty
want
of
to
drones.
any shot that you want that you just aren't willing to risk yet, or you still want to do it? Is there like a shot out there like, I want to do that, I just don't have the, I just don't want to, I just want to break anything?
No, no. I'll
No.
go shoot. I'll go shoot whatever. And I think like that's the difference. Someone had I think Casey Neistat had a great quote at one point in time, and he basically said the difference between TV people and like the top level YouTubers is they will go walk in the middle of the street to get that shot, whereas like TV shows will like simulate that shot.
Yep.
You know, I'll just go do it and
Yep.
like film it and just get it done. You know. And I think
That's
it makes
true.
it much more raw and real.
Right? It does. So what? So do you think you've learned? So coming into this world, did you? How much have you picked up as a fisherman through this filming, and how much did you bring into it? I mean, have you grown exponentially with the guys you're fishing around and all that kind of stuff, or is it kind of like you were? This is kind of where you are, and this is where you're going to be as a fishing wise, as talent.
Yeah,
Like,
obviously learned a ton. Like the more time, but it's more the time you spend on the water than it is like necessarily who you're fishing with. You pick up little keys and little things, but I think just being able to do it full time the last 3-4 years is the sheer amount of time spent on the water. And I think when you're out with people who are, you know, as talented as you are, or if your brain, I would say, flows with them, you're able to kind of, like I said before, push the limits and like see what is really possible. And I think that's why our crew for the Crappie Chronicles has become, you know, so good. I would make a very strong argument that, you know, you could put us four basically anywhere and pick out any four in terms of crappie fishing. And I don't think, like, if we had a tournament, I would have no concerns, to be honest. And it's just because like we have spent so much time looking at these fish and how big they are and what to do to target them that I feel like we've really, like, I feel like we're kind of opening a book that hasn't been written right now.
I
And
gotcha.
we're going down the pages of it saying this is what they do, this is how they move, this is how they act. Because forever people were just like, oh, a crappie, go to the deepest point of the lake, drill a few holes, they're in the basin, and they'll come through at some point. And as we're learning, that's not really the case.
That case.
They do a bunch of different things. So yeah, I think you grow just with the sheer amount of time you spend on the water.
So how much time do you spend on water per, say, per video, per episode? How much time is that spent on the water?
Well, it's been different the past 2 years. So like 2 years ago, for example, in season 2, that was probably, so we put out, oh man, what was it? 13 videos, maybe 14 videos.
14, I think.
I think I counted 40 to 50 days on the ice, whether it
Wow.
was scouting or failures or going out for an evening for 3 hours and it's just not right, so you just leave. Stuff like that. So like 40, probably 40 to 50 days there. But like last year, for example, we just did all the traveling. So like it was literally like 21 days. It was whatever
Wow.
we set aside for it. Then we went out fishing and did some other stuff too. But last year was much more of, we did not know how long this would go. So it was like, well, if we're doing this and it's getting bigger, like, let's go hit some destinations and kind of cross some stuff off the bucket list. And now that it seems to kind of be, I would say, somewhat permanently established, we're kind of able to be like, oh, okay, let's go experiment with this. Let's try this. Let's do that. Not really as worried anymore, you know?
Do you, so when you're out fishing and you're with the guys that are, that, as you claim, that are better fishermen than you, but it appears that you're all about the same now. Do you, when they get out there, are you setting up the cameras and stuff and they just take off and start fishing without you? And is it like a struggle for you to like, hey man, let me get set up here first? Or you kind of all kind of in sync of what needs to happen nowadays?
Well, it's with, so since we use GoPros, I feel like that's where maybe the TV world is different. You know, they're setting up cameras, making sure scenes are set and everything. I like the raw, real, live vibe of what's going on. So basically, the only time I ever slow them down to get cameras set up is just when we first get out there. But
Okay.
generally, it's like if we say it's early ice and you're not driving trucks out, you know, we drive to an access just like anybody else does
Yep.
and start pulling all our stuff out, putting our bibs on, you know. And at that point, like I'll start pulling out all the GoPros and giving them to the guys, and you know they format the cards, put them on, set the date and time, handle that whole thing themselves. And then once they have those on, my rule is once you have a GoPro and it's running, you can do whatever you want. Just go. Like let your fishing instincts take over and go. Very rarely do I slow anything down. Like if we get a really big fish or like something's kind of going down, I'll get everyone aware of like, hey, we're gonna do this live and film it as it happens. But like, remember, you got to slow down so I can see that fish and so you can
I
talk to
gotcha.
me. Like I know you want to get back down there and catch another 15, but like we really only need 3 or 4 of them, not a dozen. You know.
Right. Yeah, you need those 1 or 2 really good shots, and sometimes if you used to catch it and toss them back, and yeah, you miss that shot, and it's gone.
Yeah, well, and guys, I mean, for the most part, the guys now, like with the GoPros and that, like we have a pretty good feeling of when it's like, okay, we got enough filler fish, you know, like 10 to 12 or bass or some big bluegills or whatever. Then it kind of turns into like, okay, where can we get our really big one?
I gotcha.
Or, you know, what are we doing wrong or how do we want to tell this story? So I guess the difference with us is when we show up to a lake, it's not necessarily like this is how this is going to go down and this is how we're going to film it. It's much more of we're showing up. Our goal is to catch an 18 or a 4-pound crappie on camera. How are we going to do that here? And
Okay.
just going with the flow and
So
let
you
the
so
story
you
unfold itself.
so you kind of build the show as you're out there instead of like, hey, this is kind of the steps we like to have in a show. We like to have, a couple other fish, blah blah blah. You actually just let them kind of go and kind of build the show as it's happening.
Yeah, we just build it as it rolls. Just whatever's happening. It tends to play out just fine. The cooking aspect really helps with that as well. But yeah, you just let the story unfold whatever way it is. There's been 1 or 2 episodes maybe where it's been a general idea of, hey, you know, we need to go do this or catch a few fish doing this, and then we'll kind
Okay.
of move on. But for the most part now, we don't really let that dictate anything. We just go out and do it how we feel it should be done, or what gives us the best opportunity to get, you know, a really, really big one.
Okay. So what is it about crappie fishing? Why Crappie Chronicles? Why not Bluegill Chronicles? Why not something else?
Um, yeah, I mean, well, we get asked that a lot actually. So number one, bluegills, people wouldn't watch. I've done it before when I filmed Team Yukon Outdoors stuff. So guys will watch it for a bit, but they're not gonna watch 12 videos. That's just not as exciting in my opinion. The walleye thing people have brought up could maybe get done, but I don't think there's really that many great bodies of water to do it. And I think the other thing to think about is at least with walleye fishing, for the most part, it's not a very active, uh, I guess, fishing style on the water. It's a lot of it is go flip over a house and you kind of just sit there and jig, and you wait for them to come through. So it can be fairly boring for the viewer. Whereas with crappies, I think, I mean, there's a lot of points that it came to for that. One, crappies, I love catching crappies. All 4 of us really like doing it. But the other thing is it's a very active way of ice fishing. You have to move, you keep making adjustments. Crappies move based on patterns and weather patterns and how much ice there is, vegetation, everything a ton. So there's a lot to teach people. And kind of like I was telling you before the show, I think the number one reason it was Crappie Chronicles is I we kind of told this story about 4 years ago with a Metro Crappie mini series we did for Team Yukon Outdoors. But there's truly within 60 miles of Minneapolis is probably some of the best top end crappie fishing in the country. Especially now that we've traveled around and kind of seen what other
Yep.
places have. I even believe that even more. And a lot of people just leave their own backyard to go elsewhere because they're like, oh, it's, it sucks here. And we wanted to go show people, no, it doesn't. It's actually some of the best fishing there is. And, these are the reasons. So that also was a huge factor, and people can relate to that. It's very hard for people to relate to this, lake you go to 20 miles down a logging road on a snowmobile, and all the crappies are dumber than a brick.
Yep.
They've never seen a bait. So they don't know how to get them to bite because they're like, I go to my metro lake and, there's a bunch of 8-inchers, but my buddy every once in a while catches a 14. Why does he do that? How do I catch the 14?
Right.
So people want to learn about that.
So do you think, have you being around the area, has there been more pressure? Obviously there's a lot more anglers there than there's someplace willing to travel. Have you guys noticed that the lakes you're going to around the metro area have kind of increased from what you're doing and what you're showing them how to do?
Yeah, a little here and there, but I mean, it's a compliment to get followed. So I guess we do see that a lot after we film somewhere. You'll see 70 to 100 people show up. But the thing with it is they wouldn't know about that place unless they already had been there or known what was there. Like, someone isn't going to go look at Google Earth with the way I film and be like, this is where he is. Like, just for an example, like, half of the people who watch our videos on season 2 thought we were fishing on Crystal Lake in Burnsville because there was a shot of Buck Hill in the intro. Like, do you really think I would have put that there if we were fishing there? Like, come on. Like, I'm not that dumb. So, there's working the cameras the right way, but also, you can't green screen where you're catching them, so
Right.
people see the backgrounds or whatever. But we have seen some more pressure, but the fish adjust, man. They move. They're smart. They don't want to get caught. Those fish in the metro get to 15, 16, 17, 18 because they're intelligent, not
Right.
because they're dumb. So once they get, like, normally we attack them for a day or two, and by the time we put that video out, like, if somebody wants to go follow us, that bite for the most part is pretty done.
It's gone.
Like, we've educated them already. They've moved on. They're probably not in the same area. Obviously people know the fish are in the lake, but dude, there's, like, we've filmed on 40 to 50 probably different bodies of water. Like, there's so many of them. It's not necessarily like a 4-lake thing. There's a couple of them that are definitely like the top, but it's not. We have plenty of options.
So do you actively try to not put stuff in the background? Actively try not to have just show the lakes off? Is that ever a thought?
I'll film a certain direction. Okay. There's been a couple where, like, I didn't think people would know the lake that well. And then we put it out, and I was like, oh, man, more people knew that one than I thought, because a bunch of people showed up or I got texts or whatever. But then the next time I go back there, there's something going on. But, yeah, like, if you pay attention, there's some pretty strategically set up ice houses sometimes. Or, for some reason, the camera's always pointing directly into the sun, and it makes no sense. But it's like, I don't want you to see what's behind me. And especially in the cities, man, there's so many landmarks. But yeah, we're cognizant of that all the time. Like I said, I'll get some drone shots of some random places every once in a while and chuck them in there just in case. Yeah. I'd be lying if I said I haven't driven up to White Bear Lake before to fly the drone around a little bit.
That's funny.
Put them in videos and didn't film within 30 miles of there that day.
So do you think, is it like a badge of honor that you guys are doing that right in everybody's backyard? That you're just going, it's kind of like when I don't know what it was, the hunting show, the City Freaks or whatever it was, when they were hunting all these big deer in city limits. I think it was called City Limits.
The one they did down in Atlanta, and the story of Brutus or whatever. I watched all those. I don't even hunt, and I watch those videos.
Right. It's that's kind of the feel it gets. It'd be like me having a huge walleye show right in the city of Oshkosh. It's pretty funny that's what you're showing people that's out there. And is it because the fish? So it's weird to me that Minnesota is kind of growing up in Wisconsin, I've always heard that Minnesota people, all they want to do is catch crappies. And all Wisconsin people want to do is catch perch. But it's funny to me that right in your biggest metropolitan area, you have such a great population of crappies that everybody seemed to just miss.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think there's a great population everywhere, but I think there's a lot of ingredients that make the Twin Cities the best. I actually think the pressure helps it a lot. They get smart and they kind of get picked through. It's important to release the big ones, and we always do anything over 12 inches, but other people pick on them. So once they know that's happening, they get smart and they get bigger. And then to become the most dominant, they have to grow fast. And there's so many stunted little bait fish populations in the cities. And if you kind of look at I don't know, is it the latitude line, I guess, that goes across the United States? If you look at our latitude and kind of draw a circle around the world, right? Like you run into Maine, you run into some other places where there's very, very, very big crappies. Well, that's not by accident. Like they like cold weather, but they need warmth as well. So like they're right at this perfect area where they can grow the most optimally, and then also they get enough cold. And another factor, like we've talked about a bunch, is a lot of those really, really big ones are hybrids. So they're blacks mixed with whites. You don't get that in northern Minnesota. You don't get that in Wisconsin very much. There are some very, very big purebred black and white crappies across the United States. But if you talk to any taxidermist in the United States who's done a taxidermy for a state record in the last 20 years, they will tell you it's a hybrid. It is not a pure white or a pure black. So I think that's another big factor. And right in the cities is when they start to mix a lot.
So when you guys do, obviously you're fishing on these lakes, is there a lot of research? What kind of research you guys go into? Is there pre-fishing? Is it just kind of like, hey, this is where we know they're going to be from previous years and other things? Or is it like you kind of got into, it almost feels like to me that you're kind of like a crappie expert. I mean, you are a crappie expert, but you've learned through this show so much about crappies that it just, it's crazy.
Yeah, we do a lot of research. That's kind of what Waldo likes, being the research guy. So he's been working on stuff for the last 7 months. Once the season's over, he's starting to look at DNR reports. Not necessarily where like they've pulled big crappies out of, but other stuff, bait, how fertile the lake is, stuff like that. And just doing a lot of research. And I mean, obviously, like in the winter, we still keep our eyes and ears open to what's going on. Sometimes random places pop up and, we'll go hop out there. But yeah, we do a ton of research before the season, especially last year with all the travel. But this year it'll be a little bit more, well, we haven't even really said we're back this year, but I'll say it. This year will be a little bit more flying by the seat of our pants. So
okay.
A little bit more, we're looking into everything, but we'll drop on a dime to go somewhere if we need to.
So when did you catch your first crappie as a kid?
Probably up at that cabin. I don't necessarily remember that one that well. Or it might have been at Cedar Lake in Scott County, because there's about 10 million 9-inchers in there. So I probably caught one ice fishing there.
So would you ever thought this would be where you're at right now?
No, not even when we started this 3 years ago. Like, we went to go do this because I had lost I was working in corporate sales, and I lost my job because of COVID. So that's kind of what kicked me into go full-time, bet on yourself, freelance mode in the fishing world. And heading into that winter, I was out of work, and I kind of called Waldo and Griff and just like, hey man, like we tried this idea before, nobody's done it. I think it'd be really successful. Like, are you guys down to film like 6 videos? We'll do like a little mini series and see if people like it. Yep. And they said, yeah. And we went and did it, and it exploded in the snap of a finger. And I never thought it would get to where it is now. Like, we got a lot of really cool stuff coming up. And like last year we said we went to Maine. Like, I never thought I'd go to Maine ice fishing and get paid to do it. So that was pretty cool.
So what was the hardest part that first year?
Honestly, the first year was easy. It was
Was
just
it?
having fun. Yeah, we just went out, had fun, no agenda, told a good story. And the hardest part was probably getting Griff like conditioned to talking to a camera. That was probably the hardest part, but we had a lot of fun doing it. It gets harder and harder every year, to be more
Right. Is it
like be
is it just
honest.
because you have to live up to previous expectations of what you're catching and what you're trying to put out there?
Yes. Yeah, it's yeah. We have set the bar very
I
high
was gonna
for
say,
ourselves. And
yeah,
it's fun though, like being a competitor, you're like, okay, well, we can't I don't have the luxury of getting to go film a show filled with 10 to 11 inches. Like I can't. I have to throw certain bodies of water out because nobody really cares. We can
I
maybe
gotcha.
go do it once and then add a cooking element. But I don't really get that luxury. And if the bite sucks, we still have to go catch them. Like it's not the luxury of, other shows are like, oh, the crappies aren't biting. Let's go catch walleyes this week. I don't get to do that. Like we have to still go catch them. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on us, and it gets harder and harder every year. But I think it's more of just coming up with the next great idea or the next great intro, or how do we make it even better than it already is. And I don't know, it's fun, kind of keeping pushing the limit. Like I
Right.
said, I like doing that.
How much do you get to, I mean, you obviously, how much do you fish or how much don't you fish, I should say? Are you on it
I
as
don't
soon as
fit.
everybody gets set up?
Oh, I fit now that we have Luke. So last year we hired an additional cameraman. That was the biggest help by far. Season 2, I would say, and I think every guy who filmed this series would say season 2 sucked. Like the amount of work that went into season 2, time we put on the water, and it was only me filming it. Um, Season 2 was hard, really hard, and with that, we knew the importance of, like I told the guys, I'm like, we need someone else. I can't do all this, and to the level we need to for our sponsors. So getting Luke Lowy involved was by far the best decision we made. Um, so now I get to fish more, but like last year I fished a bunch more, but I need to be better about still grabbing a camera and going and getting the exact shots I want.
I gotcha.
Because Luke's very good, but everybody has a different eye. So like I'll be doing an intro and in my head I'm like, oh, I want this like sweeping left slow-mo shot of an auger, and I go through and I'm like, oh, I don't even have an auger shot. And then in my head I'm like, what was I doing that day? I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I wasn't, I was already fishing. I hadn't done anything. Um, or a sponsor's like, where's this photo? I'm like, yeah, I took that. And then I go look. I'm like, oh, I definitely did. So
See, I
yeah,
suppose
it's
you have
just
more.
I need to be a little bit more diligent on that.
I gotcha. So what's been the funnest point? Has it been just learning crappie fishing or just the content you're putting out there? What makes you most proud at the end of a season?
For me, it's seeing how much people have learned from us. Like, I think, yeah, that's definitely what's hit the most. Like each winter, especially in December and January, we start getting DMs from like, I vividly remember the first one. This dad sent us a picture of his kid, or he sent us a picture saying they were going out or whatever and like gonna try some of the stuff we talked about in an episode on some backwaters. And they went to these backwaters, and the next day he sent us a picture of his kid holding a 17 and a quarter. And
Whoa.
he was like, he's like, he is hooked for life. Like, thank you so much for this memory I got with my son. We would have never done this. I would have never tried this, would have never done any of this if it wasn't for your show. And like that hit hard. And we get a lot of those now. And that is by far the coolest thing, is getting pictures from families or parents at their cabin lake where, they always could never catch anything and have a fish fry, but now they can have a fish fry with their family and make these core memories. And that's definitely it. Like having that sort of impact, seeing, hundreds of people show up to the St. Paul ice show to come see our seminar last year and come meet us, that was like very smacky in the face, like, holy cow, we're doing something important. And yeah, it goes along with that. Like, we get all those messages. That's we say it every time. I will take, if I get 100 messages a day and that I have to reply to, and it's people telling me thank you and showing me pictures of fish they caught because of our show, I will take it every single time. By far, it keeps us going.
For the full version of this podcast, check out Fix TV. And remember, follow me on the talk at Smile and Fish and everywhere else at Matt Snell.